July 27th, 1944. The thunderous crack of an enemy shell pierced the morning air near the small French village of Saint-Vith. Inside the American Sherman tank Steel Guardian, Sergeant Mike Thompson watched death approach through his periscope. The German Panther tank's 88mm gun had found its mark, sending a projectile straight toward their hull with deadly precision. The metallic shriek of impact should have been followed by the screaming inferno that consumed tank crews in seconds. Every manual, every training exercise, every horror story from the African campaign said so. But something extraordinary happened instead. The crew inside Steel Guardian felt the tremendous impact, saw sparks fly and metal fragments scatter, but no flames erupted. No ammunition exploded. They were alive when they should have been dead. 300 yards away, Panzer Commander Klaus Weber stared through his gunner's sight in complete bewilderment. His veteran crew had achieved a perfect hit on the American tank's ammunition storage area. In 2 years of combat from Stalingrad to Normandy, such a shot meant certain destruction. Yet the enemy Sherman's turret was already turning toward them, its guns seeking revenge. "Reload! Schnell!" Weber shouted to his loader, but his voice carried confusion rather than confidence. That American tank should have been a burning tomb by now. What Weber witnessed that morning represented a revolution in armored warfare that German intelligence had completely failed to detect. The Sherman tank he had just struck was equipped with a revolutionary ammunition storage system that had transformed American tank survivability. The modification, present in every Sherman produced after January 1944, had reduced the probability of catastrophic fire from 70% to less than 15%. The story of this hidden advantage began in the ashes of disaster. February 14, 1943, at Kasserine Pass in Tunisia, marked one of America's darkest days in armored warfare. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Hayes, a young officer fresh from the Aberdeen Proving Grounds, walked among the smoldering wrecks of what had once been 300 American tanks. The acrid smell of burning fuel and worse things hung heavy in the desert air. Hayes pulled out his field notebook with trembling hands. Of the tanks his unit had brought into battle, 65% lay completely consumed by fire. The crews inside hadn't stood a chance once their ammunition began exploding. As he documented each destroyed vehicle, Hayes noticed a pattern that would haunt his dreams and drive his future work. "It's not the fuel causing these fires," he wrote in a report that would eventually reach the highest levels of military command. "It's the ammunition propellant. Those 70-plus rounds stored throughout the fighting compartment become instant incendiaries when struck by hot metal fragments." Back at Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland, Hayes found an unlikely ally in Dr. Margaret Chen, a brilliant chemical engineer who had been recruited from DuPont to solve the Army's most pressing technical challenges. Margaret, known to her colleagues as Maggie, possessed a rare combination of scientific brilliance and practical engineering sense that made her invaluable to the war effort. Their first meeting occurred in November 1943, during a tank development conference that would change both their lives and the course of the war. Hayes presented his findings from North Africa with the passion of a man who had seen too many friends die in preventable fires. Maggie listened intently, her scientific mind already working on potential solutions. "What if we could surround the ammunition with liquid?" she suggested during a break in the proceedings. "Some kind of fire suppressant that would activate when the storage containers are breached?" Hayes looked at her with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "That sounds like science fiction, Dr. Chen." "Most of the best engineering does until it works," she replied with a smile that made Hayes's heart skip unexpectedly. "Call me Maggie." "Dan," he replied, extending his hand. When their fingers touched, both felt something electric that had nothing to do with the technical problem they were trying to solve. Over the following weeks, Dan and Maggie worked together with an intensity born of urgency and growing personal connection. Initial proposals seemed absurd, filling entire fighting compartments with water, creating submarine-like sealed environments. But through countless hours of collaboration, often working late into the night in the laboratory, their concept evolved into something elegant and practical. Double-walled ammunition containers, Maggie explained during one of their midnight work sessions, her eyes bright with excitement despite her exhaustion. Liquid-filled cavities between the walls, positioned in the hull floor, away from likely impact points. Dan studied her drawings, impressed not just by the engineering, but by the way her face lit up when she explained her ideas. The liquid would flood out when the container is breached, soaking any exposed propellant before it could ignite. Exactly. Even if some propellant catches fire, the liquid prevents it from spreading to other rounds. She looked up at him, and for a moment, neither was thinking about tank warfare. Dan, this could save thousands of lives. I know, he said quietly. That's why we have to make it work. Their collaboration deepened into something more personal as winter turned to spring. Working together 18 hours a day, sharing coffee and concerns, they found themselves drawn to each other in ways that surprised them both. The war had made everyone grow up fast, but it had also created an intensity of feeling that might not have developed in peacetime. Maggie, Dan said one evening as they reviewed test results, I need to tell you something. If it's about the glycol mixture causing corrosion, I already know. We'll need to develop a new solution. No, it's not about the chemistry. Well, not the kind you mean. He took a breath. I think I'm falling in love with you. Maggie set down her test reports and looked at him directly. Dan Thompson, are you making a pass at me in the middle of a weapons development project? Maybe I am. Is that entirely inappropriate? Completely inappropriate, she said, then smiled. And mutual. Their first kiss happened right there in the laboratory, surrounded by technical drawings and chemical samples. It was tender and passionate and entirely unprofessional, and neither of them cared in the slightest. By December 1943, their personal and professional partnership had achieved remarkable results. The final solution, which Maggie dubbed Amu-Damp, contained ethyl sodium potassium phosphate with rust inhibitors and biological agents. This mixture remained liquid to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, prevented corrosion, inhibited bacterial growth, and provided superior fire suppression. Press Steel Car Company in Pennsylvania retooled its assembly lines based on their specifications. The first M4A1 76W Sherman rolled off the production line on January 3, 1944. The TE designation stood for Wet-Stowage, though few people beyond the factory floors understood its significance. Testing at Aberdeen Proving Grounds exceeded everyone's expectations, including Maggie's optimistic projections. In controlled tests, technicians fired captured German 75 and 88 mm guns at ammunition storage bins. Traditional dry storage systems detonated in 73% of hits. The new Wet-Stowage system burned in only 15% of cases. Dan and Maggie watched the test films together, seeing their months of work validated in dramatic fashion. Where dry ammunition exploded in towering pillars of flame, Wet-Stowage produced small puffs of smoke quickly extinguished by the spreading suppressant liquid. We did it, Maggie whispered, tears in her eyes as she watched tanks survive hits that would have killed their crews under the old system. We did, Dan agreed, putting his arm around her. How many lives do you think we'll save? Thousands, I hope. Maybe tens of thousands. What they couldn't have anticipated was how completely their innovation would remain hidden from German intelligence. By April 1944, 130 improved Shermans had reached England. The 2nd and 3rd Armored Divisions each received 52 of these revolutionary tanks, though initial deployment was delayed due to concerns about training crews on the new 76 mm gun and ammunition supply logistics. These improved Shermans would first see combat during Operation Cobra, beginning July 25, 1944. Dan, now promoted to major, accompanied the tanks as a technical observer. Maggie remained at Aberdeen, anxiously monitoring reports from the field and continuing to refine the system based on combat feedback. Operation Cobra commenced with the heaviest tactical air bombardment in military history. As smoke cleared from the carpet bombing, American armor surged forward through the gap at St. Lo. Leading elements included Dan's improved Shermans, facing their first real test against German defenses. The German Panzer units, devastated by the bombardment, positioned their surviving Panthers in carefully prepared ambush sites. Their tactics remained based on 2 years of successful experience against American armor. Achieve penetrating hits on Sherman ammunition storage areas. Watch the tanks burn. Move to the next target. But this time, something was different. Panthers were achieving penetrations at favorable ranges, yet many American tanks continued fighting or withdrew under their own power rather than erupting in flames. German after-action reports, captured when Panzer headquarters was overrun, reflected growing confusion about American tank resilience. Back at Aberdeen, Maggie received field reports with a mixture of professional pride and personal anxiety. Dan was somewhere in France, observing their system under actual combat conditions while she waited thousands of miles away. Dr. Chen, her assistant, called out, "We have initial casualty reports from Normandy." Maggie's heart stopped. "And?" "Tank losses are running 60% below projected figures. The Wet-Stowage system is performing even better than our tests predicted." Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by concern for Dan's safety. She had received one letter from him since the invasion began, filled with technical observations and carefully worded expressions of his feelings that had to pass military censors. "My dearest Maggie," he had written, "the modifications are performing beautifully. Yesterday I watched a Sherman take 3 direct hits and drive away under its own power. The crew survived thanks to your brilliant engineering. I think about you every day and count the hours until I can hold you again." Meanwhile, in France, Dan was witnessing the revolution firsthand. German defensive calculations, based on traditional Sherman vulnerability, proved completely inadequate when protected tanks survived at unexpected rates. Counterattacks launched against supposedly weakened American spearheads met stronger opposition than anticipated. The engineering behind their system represented exceptional wartime innovation under pressure. Each storage container consisted of precisely manufactured double-walled cells with 1.5-inch gaps between inner and outer shells. These gaps contained approximately half a gallon of ammo damp per 10-round cell. The development process had been remarkably rapid by military standards. Initial water-only systems tested in October 1943 proved the concept but revealed problems: freezing in cold weather, corrosion of brass cartridge cases, and bacterial growth in stagnant water. Adding ethylene glycol solved freezing but accelerated corrosion. Maggie's final ammo damp solution addressed all these issues while actually improving fire suppression over pure water. At the German tank testing facility at Kummersdorf, technical intelligence officers were conducting analysis of American armor using specimens captured in Tunisia before Wet-Stowage existed. Their evaluation focused on M4A1 tanks from the 1st Armored Division captured at Sidi Bou Zid in February 1943. German technical reports meticulously documented every aspect of Sherman design: armor composition, engine performance, transmission characteristics, and crucially, ammunition storage. Intelligence bulletins distributed to Panzer units contained detailed drawings of ammunition rack placement in sponsons above track level, with specific recommendations to target these areas for maximum destructive effect. This intelligence, distributed as doctrine to all German tank units, became standard procedure. Gunnery schools from Putlos to Paderborn taught students to aim for Sherman sponsons. Range cards issued to anti-tank units highlighted these areas in red. The tactical doctrine became so thoroughly embedded that even when sponson hits stopped producing fires, crews assumed they had simply missed the ammunition storage. The timing proved catastrophic for German forces. Their comprehensive Sherman analysis concluded just as American factories began producing modified variants. Every subsequent intelligence update referenced the older evaluation as definitive. When frontline units reported unusual Sherman survivability, staff officers dismissed these reports as exaggerations from combat-stressed troops. Dan observed this intelligence failure firsthand during interrogations of captured German tank crews. "They keep asking us about our new tanks," he reported to Maggie in a coded letter. "They can't understand why their proven tactics aren't working anymore. They have no idea that we've changed the game from the inside." The transformation of American tank production in early 1944 represented industrial coordination unprecedented in warfare. Fisher Tank Arsenal in Grand Blanc, Michigan, transitioned from M4A2 to M4A3 production while simultaneously incorporating Maggie's modifications. Without stopping the production line, between February 1944 and March 1945, Fisher produced 3,071 M4A3 75W tanks. Hull floors required complete redesign to accommodate ammunition storage below the turret basket. This meant new stamping dies, modified welding jigs, and altered assembly sequences. The partial turret basket, replacing the full rotating floor to allow hull ammunition access, required redesigning the entire turret traverse mechanism. Press Steel Car Company achieved similar production milestones, starting M4A176W production in January 1944. They manufactured 3,426 units through July 1945. They had to integrate Maggie's ammunition system with the new 76mm gun installation, requiring turret modifications, different ammunition types, and rebalanced weight distribution. By June 1944, American factories were producing only Wet-Stowage variants. The transition had been achieved so smoothly that German intelligence, working from year-old captured specimens, remained completely unaware of the fundamental change. The bocage terrain of Normandy became an inadvertent testing ground for the modification's effectiveness. The hedgerow country forced combat at ranges where German guns easily penetrated Sherman armor. Yet American tank losses proved surprisingly recoverable. Third Army's maintenance battalions reported recovering and repairing 67% of knocked out Shermans during Operation Cobra, of tanks that would have been total fire losses with dry storage. Approximately 70% returned to service with the new protection. This invisible multiplication of American tank strength confounded German planning at every level. German commanders expressed mounting frustration in war, diaries about American tanks appearing to have inexhaustible reserves. Panthers were achieving hits, even penetrations, but weren't producing permanent kills. American maintenance units were recovering tanks German crews thought destroyed, repairing them, and returning them to combat. The mathematical models German staff used for calculating enemy strength, based on permanent losses from ammunition fires, no longer functioned correctly. Their intelligence estimates consistently underestimated American tank strength by 30 to 40%, missing the recovered and repaired Shermans that Maggie's modification had saved. Major General Maurice Rose's 3rd Armored Division spearheaded operations with approximately 200 improved Shermans. In 7 days of intense combat, the division advanced 100 miles, fought dozens of engagements, and maintained operational momentum, despite German counterattacks specifically designed to destroy American armor. Dan accompanied Rose's spearhead, documenting the system's performance under the most demanding conditions. Each evening, he wrote detailed technical reports for Aberdeen while composing more personal letters to Maggie. Dearest Maggie, he wrote after a particularly intense day of fighting. Today I watched miracles happen repeatedly. A Sherman in my sight took 4 direct hits from a Panther at 800 yards. The crew walked away with minor injuries. 2 hours later, that same tank was back in action after field repairs. Your engineering is saving lives every single day. Back at Aberdeen, Maggie worked feverishly on second-generation improvements based on Dan's field reports. She was developing enhanced formulations of AMU-damp, improved container designs, and better crew access systems. But her thoughts constantly turned to Dan's safety as reports of heavy fighting reached the home front. The German response to Operation Cobra, called Operation Lüttich, launched August 7th with 4 Panzer divisions aimed at cutting off American spearheads. The plan assumed American armored units would be exhausted and depleted after their rapid advance. German intelligence estimated American tank strength at 60% of actual numbers, completely missing the recovered and repaired Shermans that the modification had saved. The 30th Infantry Divisions stand at Mortain. Supported by tank battalions equipped with modified Shermans, shattered German offensive power. The 743rd Tank Battalion absorbed repeated attacks by SS and Wehrmacht Panzer units. Despite suffering numerous penetrations, the battalion maintained cohesion and combat effectiveness throughout the 6-day battle. During the Mortain fighting, Dan experienced the system's benefits personally when his observation tank took a direct hit from a concealed anti-tank gun. The shell penetrated the hull just inches from the ammunition storage, but instead of the expected explosion, AMU-damp liquid flooded the compartment and extinguished scattered propellant grains before they could ignite. "I'm alive because of you," he wrote to Maggie that night, his hand still shaking from the close call. "The modification saved my life today, and probably the lives of every man in my crew. I love you more than words can express, and I'm counting the days until I can tell you that in person." The Battle of Aracourt in September 1944 provided history's clearest demonstration of the new reality. When the 113th Panzer Brigade attacked American positions on September 19th, they expected to achieve tactical surprise and destroy American armor through superior German gunnery. The initial German attack achieved numerous hits on Shermans of the 4th Armored Division. Panthers and Panzer reported multiple penetrations on American tanks at favorable ranges, but the American response defied all expectations. Instead of withdrawing with heavy losses, the 4th Armored counterattacked with unexpected strength. The statistics tell the remarkable story. The 4th Armored Division suffered 151 Sherman losses during the Aracourt battles, but only 41 were complete write-offs. The remaining 110 were repaired and returned to service, most within a week. German intelligence, counting all 151 as permanent losses, calculated that 4th Armored should have been combat ineffective. Instead, it maintained offensive operations throughout the engagement. Dan observed the Aracourt fighting firsthand, documenting how German tactical calculations based on traditional Sherman vulnerability had become completely obsolete. "They're fighting the wrong war," he reported to Aberdeen. "Every engagement plan assumes we'll lose 2/3 of our tanks to fires. When we don't, their entire tactical framework collapses." General Patton's initial skepticism about 76mm Shermans reversed completely after Aracourt. Third Army subsequently accepted only 76mm armed Wet-Stowage variants, recognizing that improved firepower combined with enhanced survivability created superior combat capability. As autumn 1944 progressed, second-generation improved Shermans entered combat. The M4A3E8 EZ8 incorporated lessons learned from Dan and Maggie's ongoing collaboration. Improved suspension, wider tracks for better mobility despite added weight, and refined ammunition storage with better crew access. The specialized assault variant, the M4A3E2 Jumbo, incorporated Wet-Stowage from initial production starting June 1944. With frontal armor reaching 4 inches and turret armor up to 6 inches, the jumbo could absorb tremendous punishment. Combined with ammunition protection, these tanks achieved survival rates that bewildered German observers. By November 1944, First Army fielded 105 M4A3E2s across various tank battalions. Third Army operated 90 jumbos in 6 battalions. These tanks spearheaded assaults on fortified positions, absorbing punishment that would have destroyed entire companies of earlier Shermans. Operation Watch on Rhine. Germany's last desperate offensive in the West. Launched December 16, 1944, based on completely flawed intelligence about American armored capabilities. German planning assumed American tank losses would follow patterns established in 1943. The offensive's success depended on rapid destruction of American armored reserves through concentrated Panzer attacks. These calculations assumed traditional Sherman vulnerability. When protected Shermans survived at unexpected rates, the operational timeline collapsed immediately. SS-Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper's Kampfgruppe, spearheading 1st SS Panzer Division's attack, encountered this new reality near Stoumont on December 19th. His Panthers achieved numerous penetrations on Shermans of the 743rd Tank Battalion at close range, yet American resistance continued with undiminished intensity. In post-war interrogations, Peiper expressed profound frustration at American tanks continuing to fight after taking hits that should have destroyed them completely. The 761st Tank Battalion, the African-American Black Panthers, demonstrated these advantages throughout their 183 days of continuous combat, including the Ardennes fighting. Staff Sergeant Reuben Rivers, posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, exemplified the survivability Dan and Maggie's system provided. His tank absorbed 2 direct hits on November 19th that penetrated the hull but didn't ignite the ammunition. Rivers continued fighting despite severe wounds, his crew surviving hits that would have killed them all in earlier Sherman models. As 1945 began, Dan received orders to return to the United States for a new assignment. After 18 months of combat observation, he would finally reunite with Maggie to work on post-war tank development. The prospect of seeing her again filled him with more excitement than any successful combat test. Their reunion at Aberdeen Proving Grounds was everything both had dreamed of during the long separation. Maggie ran into Dan's arms the moment he stepped off the train, and their embrace lasted so long that other passengers had to walk around them. "I missed you every single day," she whispered against his ear. "I love you, Maggie Chen," he replied. "Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I've been waiting for you to ask since that first night in the laboratory." Their wedding took place at Aberdeen in February 1945, attended by colleagues who had worked on the Wet-Stowage project and tank crews whose lives had been saved by their innovation. It was a small ceremony but filled with profound meaning, uniting 2 people whose love had developed alongside their revolutionary contribution to the war effort. German forces were capturing intact Wet-Stowage, Shermans with increasing frequency as their defensive lines collapsed. Operation Nordwind resulted in the capture of numerous M4A3 75W tanks from the 43rd Tank Battalion near Hagenau. In January 1945, German crews operated these captured vehicles for several days without recognizing the significance of the liquid-filled ammunition containers. The Wehrmacht's Technical Intelligence Branch had effectively ceased functioning by early 1945. The few technical specialists still working focused on desperate wonder weapon projects rather than analyzing enemy equipment. Even if frontline troops had recognized the modification's significance, no mechanism existed to process and disseminate this. Intelligence, the U.S. Army's Operations Research Office, documented the transformation in their post-war study, ROT-117. Pre-modification. Shermans burned in 60 to 80% of penetrating hits. Wet-Stowage variants burned in only 10 to 15% of cases. This reduction multiplied American armored effectiveness invisibly across the entire European theater. Conservative estimates suggest the modification prevented burning in at least 1,000 tanks, representing 5,000 trained crew members saved and dozens of battalions maintaining combat effectiveness instead of requiring complete reconstitution. German planning never incorporated these realities, and every operational plan used obsolete data about Sherman vulnerability. This systematic error, repeated across thousands of engagements, contributed directly to German defeat. Post-war interrogations and memoirs confirm the complete intelligence gap. Not a single German account from the war years mentions recognition of this modification. Otto Carius, who destroyed over 150 enemy tanks, wrote extensively about combat against Shermans in Tigers in the Mud, without mentioning unusual fire resistance. Ernst Bachmann's famous account never mentions surprise at Sherman's surviving hits. Unit histories compiled by veteran associations contain no recognition of improved Sherman survivability. The Wet-Stowage intelligence failure represents one of the most complete intelligence breakdowns in modern warfare. Multiple factors created this blind spot. German technical evaluation occurred using specimens captured before the modification existed. Defensive operations provided limited opportunity for systematic technical intelligence collection. Organizational dysfunction prevented field observations from reaching analysts. And cultural overconfidence reduced perceived need for detailed enemy equipment analysis. Most crucially, the modification's invisibility proved decisive. It didn't change Sherman appearance, didn't require new tactics, didn't announce its presence. German intelligence, looking for dramatic changes, missed the subtle revolution occurring inside American tanks. Dan and Maggie's work continued. After the war ended in May 1945, their Wet-Stowage system became standard for all American tank production and influenced post-war NATO tank development. They remained at Aberdeen, eventually becoming the Army's leading experts on tank survivability and ammunition safety. The Wet-Stowage story offers enduring lessons about innovation and intelligence. Technical advantages need not be revolutionary to prove decisive. Evolutionary improvements solving specific problems can prove more valuable than dramatic redesigns. The modification that can be deployed immediately may prove more effective than the perfect solution requiring years of development. For Dan and Maggie Thompson, their wartime innovation represented both professional achievement and personal triumph. They had solved a critical technical problem that saved thousands of lives while finding each other in the process. Their love story began in a laboratory and was tested in the crucible of combat, emerging stronger for the experience. The Sherman tank Wet-Stowage ammunition system reduced catastrophic fire probability by 75% and saved thousands of Allied lives. Yet its greatest success was remaining completely undetected by German forces throughout World War II's crucial final year. From introduction in January 1944 through war's end in May 1945, every major American armored operation employed substantial numbers of improved Shermans. German forces encountered them from Operation Cobra through the Reich's final defense, capturing and operating hundreds without recognizing their fundamental improvement. American engineers designed the system to save lives, not deceive enemies, yet its invisibility to German intelligence multiplied its effectiveness beyond calculation. The modification validated American design philosophy. Practical solutions implemented quickly proved superior to German pursuit of technical perfection. History should remember Wet-Stowage as the modification that won by remaining hidden, achieving victory through enemy ignorance as much as American engineering. German tank crews fought the wrong enemy with obsolete tactics based on faulty assumptions and lost. The modification didn't just save American lives. It shortened the war by maintaining American armored strength at levels that accelerated German defeat. In this hidden advantage, multiplied across 1,000 battles we find one of World War II's most remarkable yet unknown stories. A simple modification that changed everything while remaining invisible to those who most needed to see it. And at its heart, the love story of two brilliant people whose personal and professional partnership helped win the war. If you're fascinated by these incredible untold stories of World War II, where love and innovation changed the course of history, then you absolutely need to subscribe to our channel right now. We uncover the hidden romances, secret technologies, and passionate relationships that shaped the war's outcome in ways you've never heard before. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because next week we're revealing another incredible love story from the Pacific theater that involves a code-breaking genius and the pilot whose life she saved through her brilliant work. Don't miss these amazing stories of courage, love, and innovation that prove that even in humanity's darkest hour, the power of human connection and ingenuity can triumph over any obstacle. Subscribe now and become part of our community of history lovers who believe that the greatest stories are often the ones hidden in the shadows of history.